Welcome to another episode of Investing in Intellectual Property with Dave. Today we have a very special guest with us. This gentleman has created over 50 commercially successful products. You may know him by arguably his most famous product and invention, the Selfie stick. Please help me welcome Wayne Fromm. How's it going, Wayne?
It's going great. How are you doing?
I'm doing pretty good. I appreciate you, kind of working through the technical difficulties with me here. And I know we were saying beforehand with the test, I think the test maybe is kind of the name. I know when you first enter in, they have you enter in your name, and I think maybe you had entered in test, and that's why it's showing up as test at the bottom, as opposed to, I guess, your name, Wayne, or whatnot. So I wanted to point that out to the viewers, unless in case they thought your name was Test. Like, no, his name isn't Test.
I'll change my name for convenience. How's that?
Okay. So yeah, and again, thanks for. I know I was telling you a little bit about the I guess the reason for kind of the podcast and whatnot, and I guess jumping into your story, again, having a lot to cover. Before getting into the invention of the selfie stick, I wanted to talk about your background, because did you ever think you would be an inventor, or where you at right now? Because again, growing up, have a finance degree from the University of Toronto, as well as a bachelor of arts in psychology from York University, which again is in Toronto, Canada. So I guess did this kind of inventorship, I know you had a lot of background, which we'll get off into, with toy products and things like that. Did that just kind of come out of nowhere, or was that, although you had the degrees from the university and academia, you always kind of had a passion for inventing and entrepreneurship and that side of things?
Yeah, it was always percolating, even as a young child. In fact, I was around 10 years old. I had a friend in Detroit, and I used to go there often, and they had a magic store, and I was intrigued by magic, and my friend was into magic. So I bought all these magic tricks. I had a little suitcase, and I would promote myself as a magician for birthday parties. And I wasn't that much older than the other children there, but I was able to kind of astound and amaze them. So it was a very fun project. So I was always interested in entertainment, industries as well, analyzing why magic tricks, could fool the senses. I thought that was intriguing. So I wanted to deconstruct them and understand not just the psychology, but sometimes the mechanics as well.
Okay.
And that pretty much was what my young life was all about. And then when I went into university, I thought, okay, psychology, if I can understand how my mind works and how other people's mind works, rather than that's be great insight for trying to be, creative. I got into the games industry, arcade games. So I was in video games for quite some time. So that was entertainment related. It applied, psychology. We had flashing lights and sounds and, all sorts of things that brought the people in. And of course, having a degree in finance, economics, I was able to manage the business, but I was not manifesting the actual invention side of my brain, more the marketing side. But that came later, the inventing.
Right. So it seems like you kind of, as you were navigating kind of university and school, it wasn't necessarily kind of go work in a corporate environment. Was that correct? Did you maybe sort of, trying to get the skills of psychology and finance to try to maybe kind of take along an entrepreneurship route and kind of be a little bit more well-rounded when you kind of go about that path?
Absolutely. I never had a goal of being in a corporate world. It was always entrepreneurial. My father was an entrepreneur. My mother was as well. So that was in my, in my DNA. And even in high school, I had different businesses, a rental housing agency. I did photography. I did all sorts of things. So I was always trying to figure out how to buy my freedom, basically, or how to earn my freedom.
No, for sure. And it seems like you've definitely done it. Now, I guess maybe one last question on this, because this is intriguing. Being uber successful as you are now, especially as it relates to, inventing and entrepreneurship, would you kind of take that same path again, or would you just get out of high school and go right into entrepreneurship and inventing and the things that kind of made you who you are today?
I think that you have to take the steps. It's like lifting heavy weights. Yep. You start small and you build your way up. There's a lot of lessons along the way. Not just dealing with people, negotiating. Because even as an inventor, you have to make sure you can either exploit your own inventions the way Dr. Edmund, Dr. Lamb did with the Polaroid, or do you try to license it? And if you license it, you have to either have an agent, I guess, to work with you, or someone in your capacity, or you just have to have the wherewithal to make sure that you're not being taken advantage of in one way or another. Because there's a lot of sharks out there.
Yeah, no, definitely a lot of sharks. And I know I was mentioning kind of Dan Klishner to you offline just because he's the inventor of Bop It. I had him on several months ago doing an interview with him, and it seems like you guys had a similar path. I know he's still in the toy industry, and I know you kind of maybe graduated or did things outside of the toy industry. But a lot of products that maybe people don't know you invented, from Disney's Beauty and the Beast, the talking mirror back in the 90s, Disney's the Aladdin lamp, and then Nesquik milkshaker. I guess, and this, was all before the selfie stick. So how did those different opportunities come about, and especially with regard to working with Disney, because everybody knows Disney is this behemoth entertainment company. And again, those, I remember the talking mirror and the magic lamp. So I guess, how did those opportunities come about, and just kind of the working relationship between you and Disney?
It was a struggle, a lot of hard work, a lot of cold calling, a lot of rejection. You have to have a thick skin in this industry. And actually, I still am in the toy industry. I have a new one that I've been working on. It was my COVID therapy project. I had so much time on my hands. We're going to be launching it for this coming Christmas. It's going to be quite exciting, and it's an improved version of the Nesquik milkshake maker. So this is it's got a lot of bells and whistles and some magic aspects to it, and lots of very unique patent claims as well. So I'm looking forward to the launch of that. But as far as getting into it, I was at a trade show, a stationery show in New York City at the Javits Center years back, and I had an idea for a greeting card, and I just found an agent. I knocked on doors in those days. I just went to New York and just found, agent said, okay, this looks interesting. You can carve out a little space at our big booth. And I did that, and it was like a little kid, in a big city now. This all of a sudden, everything's ticking, and I'm seeing all these other booths and what's going on. And up until then, I thought that licensed products they were all just manufactured by the same company. If it was Coca-Cola, I just assumed it was Coca-Cola that was doing it. I didn't understand the mechanics behind it. So I was intrigued, learned more, and I thought of an idea for a Disney product called Disney New York. And of course, I got the cold shoulder. What's your distribution? How many employees? How long has the company been active? This sort of thing. You couldn't get anywhere. So I just kept plugging away at it. And I reached out to, at that time, the Disney stores. They were fairly new at the time, and they were looking for product. And one of the buyers was kind enough to, accept a meeting. So I flew out there with this concept for little bubbles that the kids would wear on the neck and blow the bubbles. And turned out the timing was opportune because they had just released Little Mermaid. They only had soft lines. They only had T-shirts and hats, this sort of thing. They didn't have any toys. So they thought, this is great. And she took a chance on me, ordered 10,000 of them. I had no idea how I'd manufacture them. I didn't know anything about manufacturing whatsoever. I didn't know even about packaging or labeling and all of this other stuff. And it was, I had about 4 months to pull it all together. And it was a great learning experience. And she liked the bottles, as it turned out. They were, plastic filled with the soap, all safety tested. We had to figure out how to get them in without air pressure issues on airplanes. And, it was a lot of learning. But she liked it, and she kept ordering more and more and more. And then she introduced me to more people on the team. And then they gave me an advanced copy of the script for Beauty and the Beast. They said, there's going to be 2 icons, a mirror and a rose. Why don't you come up with some toy ideas for it? And that was basically the genesis of the Beauty and the Beast mirror. And then that went on to become other Disney toys afterwards, because once you get a bit of a reputation, then, you start meeting other people, and you're invited to maybe, come up with some ideas for their companies. And that was the road that I took.
Wow. No, and I guess that had to be exciting, but at the same time, I would imagine nerve-wracking to come in and say, okay, I've pitched them this idea, and they liked it to the tune of ordering 10,000, but then they want me to do all this stuff that I have no idea how to do. That's like talking about throwing into the fire. But it seemed like it worked out, and then they liked it so much they came back more from ordering more products. And it seems like I would imagine that you still have I guess, a good relationship with Disney today, where you kind of do things from them time to time.
I still stay in touch with some people, but a lot, as we know, in all corporations, people change, they move, they retire. So you have to basically start every few years with new blood.
Gotcha. No, yeah, and that makes perfect sense. So I guess with because this is an interesting thing, and as I kind of just prepared for this interview, where you work closely with your daughter Sage, and I think I was watching what's it, the $1 Million Idea that you got going on, and she was talking about how I'm not sure if she had to convince you or she was telling you, hey, I'd rather after graduating college, if I'm not mistaken, I'd rather just work for you as opposed to going to work for some other company, marketing company or whatnot. So did that take some convincing, or was it like just come on board? Because I guess I have a 6-year-old daughter, and it'll be a while before she gets older, but I would love for her to come kind of work within a family business and kind of do that, as opposed to maybe just kind of going out and working in corporate America, so to speak. So was that something that I guess you welcomed with open arms, or what you hesitant about, because you hear stories of maybe you don't want to like sour the relationship between a father and daughter over, like, I guess, the working aspect of it. So was that like a tough sell, or was it all kind of open arms, welcoming?
It was open arms. She was there during the early stages and prototypes of, especially the selfie stick, because she was in university prior to that. But she had always been a sounding board and part of a focus group. I would. The remuneration was having her live in my house and giving her breakfast and lunch and dinner. But she would bring her friends over, and we would, I would show them toy prototypes and whatnot. So when I was working on what became the selfie stick, the same thing. I've got lots of pictures with her and her friends, and we were experimenting with it and whatnot, different angles, different types of image capturing devices, etc. So she was all part of that, even when she was in university, and when Facebook had just come out, she was promoting it to her friends that her dad had this idea. And then once she graduated, she did work for a marketing company, and that took her across the country of Canada for one summer. And then when she came back, she said, hey, I'm enjoying marketing more than psychology, because she wanted to go on for a master's and then a PhD in psychology. And she started to work with me, and she enjoyed it, and we get along famously. We would do trade shows all over the world, and photo sessions, and she was great at explaining to people and to the press and the media, how it works, etc.
Nice. So it seems like it kind of worked out well, as far as maybe kind of her strengths maybe were your, I don't want to say weaknesses, but kind of complementing each other pretty good.
Yeah, absolutely. We have great synergy.
Nice. So, and again, listening to maybe another interview of yours, but I love your process for kind of talking through maybe getting a patent, because you were talking about studying a marketplace and doing your patentability search and kind of researching business that could possibly sell your product. And I thought that was, I guess, pretty good. It's good information, because as a patent attorney, a lot of the times, and I'm not sure if this is breaking news, but a lot of the times as patent attorneys, we want to focus on the big fish, so to speak. So we want to, the company that's going to, the Fortune 500 company, Fortune 1000 company, the company that's going to give you millions of dollars a year. And unfortunately, as a result of that, the individual inventor a lot of the times can fall by the wayside, because we're not necessarily focused on that, unless it's like a friend or a family friend or something along those lines. We're not necessarily focused on just working with the smaller inventor. Plus, it's a fair amount of kind of bringing you up to speed, as opposed to kind of dealing with in-house counsel and things like that already kind of know the process and know what to go about. But I think kind of I like your take on that, because when somebody is coming, say, to me, and they're buttoned up in that way, as far as they have maybe some references that they can provide to me to say, hey, I already did the search, and then this, what I believe is the closest thing, and they have mock-ups and things like that. That shows me as a patent attorney that this person is serious. And although it's not maybe all the time, a lot of the times I'm more willing to work with somebody who I believe is serious, as opposed to somebody who's maybe doesn't kind of know what's going on and having to bring them up to speed. So I like your advice on all that. I guess, where did you develop? Did that just kind of get developed and fine-tuned over time, or was that kind of taught to you? Or I guess, how did you come up with that process?
It was a necessity. one of the companies that had knocked off or counterfeited one of the products of mine that I had a patent on, they went for a declaratory judgment. So, I had to immerse myself in patent law to really understand what was going on, because I didn't want to rely on others. It was an expensive ordeal, as you know, time-consuming, emotionally draining. It can be as well. So to me, information is power, and I've always wanted to understand as much as possible. Since that day, I have spent a lot of time trying to understand not at your level, of course, but as much as a lay person can, or at least somebody that holds patents can. So I'm pretty knowledgeable now, and it's a lot easier today, of course, with the online resources that are available. So, you could easily suggest to people, in order to save their time, their money, do as much research as they can. They can learn how to do searches at uspto.gov. They can study the industry. They can make sure that their idea is truly novel. It hasn't been done before. There's a lot of things that the inventor or prospective inventor can do on their own ahead of time.
No, nice. And I definitely agree with that. And I think just kind of taking that extra step when you're trying to go see a patent attorney, or even a patent agent for that matter, it kind of puts you in a better light. Now, you're in, and I know we have referenced it about going to university in Canada. For the audience who maybe not know, you're from Canada. Are you still, I guess, standing in Canada? I would imagine that you're still, in the U.S. a fair amount of time. So do you still stay in Canada, or are you, I guess, kind of residing in the U.S. these days?
I live in Canada, but my markets always start in the United States. So I'll always file for a U.S. patent first, and then I'll do PCT after that.
No, and I think that was a perfect segue, because my next question was going to be, how do you decide where to file for patent protection? And I would imagine that is interesting because, for example, if somebody's coming to me, whether it's a company or I guess an individual inventor, and they want to file, like you said, of course, a lot of times you file in the U.S. because it's going to be sold in the U.S. But if it's going to be manufactured in, say, China, or maybe sold in Canada, I, as a patent attorney, will reach out to a Canadian associate or Indian associate or a Chinese associate so that they can handle filing the patent application on that side or in that country. I guess with you having so much experience here in the U.S., do you just deal directly with a U.S. attorney as opposed to going through a Canadian attorney, patent attorney, who is then kind of communicating with the U.S. patent attorney?
Yeah, I use U.S. patent attorneys. I generally skip over Canada. I've done it before. I've had patents. The mirrors were patented in Canada. I didn't find it worthwhile. The population is only 1/10 the size of the United States, so economically it didn't make sense. I had patents in China, and it's very difficult to enforce them, so I wouldn't do that again. I would cherry pick. I'd go after countries in Europe. I'd go after Japan. I'd go after countries that that respect patent law the most, and are democratic politically.
Yeah, no, for sure. That makes perfect sense. So how is it? Because again, I was talking to Dan Klishner about this, and it seems like he kind of, I guess his process was, if he's kind of contracting with the company to come up with the product, it seems like sometimes they may handle the patent filing, but if it's something that kind of he's holding on to, then he would handle the patent filing for some of those things. Is that a similar thing where whether you're working with Disney or maybe kind of doing things for yourself, as far as, okay, Disney may kind of work with their patent attorneys or their patent agents to file a patent application, as opposed to, say, I would imagine for the selfie stick that, you're kind of dealing with all that yourself, or with everything, do you just kind of handle in-house and then maybe just give a license to Disney or these different companies to actually use the app or be able to use Invention?
I do everything. I want the patents under my name or assigned to one of my companies. I want control of the patent. And I will license. I've licensed in the past to companies like Crayola, for example, or other large companies. And I also prefer to do the manufacturing. Since I started in the toy industry, I became knowledgeable and literate in manufacturing as well. So I had several, to China. I've got long-lasting relationships over there. I've got engineers, top engineers in the United States and Taiwan and overseas in China as well. So I do like to keep everything under my name and my control, but there's many different paths that people could take. It just works well for me. That's how I've discovered.
Nice. And then I guess maybe going back to where to file a patent application. As you just mentioned, whether it's China or another country where you're manufacturing the product, just because it's a lot less expensive compared to trying to manufacture the product in the U.S. Do you consider filing again, like you file a PCT application and then nationalize it in these different countries? Would you nationalize in China? Because I know sometimes it can be a toss up on enforcement or whatnot. Nancy Tedeschi, who I interviewed maybe several months ago, she kind of created this snap-it screw, which she got a patent for in China. What she wasn't going to do, by the way, but her patent agent, I think at that point in time, kind of essentially made her do it, which she said in hindsight she was happy because she was able to successfully defend against copycats in China. So is that something that you are welcome to maybe filing for protection in China, or maybe not so much so because it can be
maybe things have changed. The last time I did it was when I was doing what became the Selfie stick, and that was around 2006.
Yep.
And it was virtually unenforceable. We got nowhere with that Chinese patent. Where I found success, though, was in the United States. The Chinese companies that were selling on Amazon, we were able to get a ruling with Amazon that my patent was enforceable, and they gave the infringers 30 days to either sign a license agreement with my company, or their stores would be shut down and their inventory would be returned to them or destroyed. So that's where I found the most leverage, not from the Chinese patent, but I certainly am open to it if that's...
And it seems like this was more so recent, so maybe they have turned the corner. I know a lot of times big companies are filing China, or some big companies are filing China just because it's kind of a part of the thing, and they're maybe not as concerned about cost of things. But I think she was saying this was maybe 17, 18, 19, where she was able to successfully defend it for a fraction of the cost, I might add.
Right. That's good. That's good information. I will. You know what? On my new one, I will certainly investigate that. That's a great point. Yeah.
Oh yeah, for sure. Because she was saying that she filed her. I think she did a PCT where she filed in Europe, and she said if she had to do it all over again, she wouldn't have did in Europe, and she would have just only filed in China because the people because she had some knockoffs in Europe. Similar to, I think, maybe what you were saying about Chinese copycats selling in the U.S. But she was saying, hey, but the copycats in Europe, they were making it in Europe. So she said, I can make my product cheaper in China than what they can make my product for in Europe. So she was like, in hindsight, she wouldn't have gotten, say, the application or the patent in Europe, which costs, I think, maybe $40,000 or whatever, but the multiple applications. She would have just did it in China.
Yeah. That's interesting. For me, when I work on a new project, I take into account distribution. So I'm now at the stage where I'm trying to lock up distribution around the world, under non-disclosures, companies that I trust, companies I've dealt with before, so that we can launch simultaneously worldwide. So this is how I approach the business aspect at this point. So, if you've got good distribution, you've got your majors locked up, then it doesn't leave as much room for knockoffs at that point.
Yep. And that makes perfect sense. And I definitely want to get into the story a little bit later when you were in Belgium, I think for the Olympics back in 2008. And you had the guy, I think maybe at the trade show, who was selling a knockoff. I thought that was pretty interesting. But I think even now, so more than ever with, say, Amazon and social media, I think you had made a point with Amazon being able to do this. I see, like back in the day, you had to maybe know somebody to be able to get into a big box retailer, whether it was Walmart or Sam's Club or one of those big box retailers. But now with Amazon, it's extremely not only easy to just kind of sell it on there, but I think, as you mentioned, they have good recourse for copycats. Like, for example, for patent owners to get the copycats moved pretty quickly and pretty inexpensively if you show Amazon that you have a legitimate patent or issued patent on the product, which I think, I for whatever reason, I believe people don't talk about this enough, but that's a game changer, because as opposed to having to go to court, spend hundreds of thousands, if not millions of dollars trying to defend your patent, you're selling on Amazon, and a copycat comes up and sells it, you can get those removed. Now, you may have to do it over and over again, but you can get it removed pretty quickly and pretty inexpensively. I guess maybe what's your thoughts on that?
I think it's great. When Amazon was younger, that wasn't the case.
Yep.
A lot of letters went unanswered, and they kept saying that this is not our problem. We're just a portal for sales, etc. But they stepped up to the plate. They didn't always, and when they did, it was my daughter that spearheaded the whole initiative and won on our behalf for the company. But yeah, I agree with you. At this point in time, it's very hard to get into the, Walmart, Target, whatnot. You have to convince the buyers. They're looking for engagement. They're looking for your online presence. They're looking the metrics on your Amazon sales. So really, I think that everybody, or at least my goal for my new toy is going to be Amazon first. And then with that, we'll go into to the other markets. But because I'm in the toy industry at this point, this new project, I have existing relationships with toy companies that do have brick and mortar relationships. So I will work with them, but I will keep Amazon to myself. That's my goal.
Gotcha. No, nice. Yeah. And anybody who's selling a product, if you're not kind of doing it on Amazon, I just think you're doing yourself a big disservice at this point in time, at least. So I guess moving on to, the selfie stick, which is like the holy grail to a lot of people. And actually, I'm kind of doing this interview with the selfie stick holding my phone. So I would show you otherwise, but the selfie stick is holding my phone, and I'm doing an interview, and I got this off of Amazon, kind of tying that all in on Amazon, and I'm actually going to, when this video drops, I'm gonna kind of enter a raffle to purchase a selfie stick for someone else to have, or to purchase it off Amazon for someone else to buy. So that's something that I've been kind of trying to do when I bring guests on, and the product is pretty cool, and I can afford it. I know some of these products are a lot more expensive, which makes that a little difficult, but with the selfie sticks, it makes it a lot easier. But I guess what maybe led to the invention of the selfie stick? Because in hindsight, it's like, man, this is why didn't anybody think about this? But from my understanding, this wasn't so obvious at the time that you did it back in mid 2000s at that point.
Well, it was actually before that. It was around 2003. It predated the Apple smartphone. So I was working on this with point-and-shoot cameras, DSLRs, some of the early Nokia-type cell phones. I had adapters, and of course, the resolution on the cameras were very low. People didn't even know how to transfer the phone, the pictures off their phone. So the idea came to me because I was traveling with my daughter, and we were always, trying to take pictures and having to give our, let the camera to a stranger or whatnot. And even if they were well-intentioned, they could actually drop it or get suntan lotion on the camera, touch the lens, who knows, right? And then plus people walking between you and the camera. If you set it on, on a ledge of some sort, and you set your self-timer, then you have to understand how to use the self-timer and all. Like this was before smartphones. Things were not intuitive. Every brand had some, different software in it. So that was where it all started. I just thought, hey, as a parent, I'd love to be in pictures with my family and my past. My father was rarely in our photos. If I look at the old photo albums, because he was taking the pictures. So,
right.
That was the goal. It was not done out of narcissism. It wasn't done out of, because the word selfie didn't even exist back then. I called it a handheld monopod, basically, and an extendable handheld monopod. And I reversed the traditional monopod. Most monopods in those days, the thin end touched the ground, and the thick end is where you'd hold the camera. And I did the inverse of that. And then I kept working on different adapters from 1/4 20s for the standard cameras into, of course, what became smartphones and different grips for them, and it just kept evolving as the technology. Then GoPro cameras, we worked with GoPro. That's how, we got into the Sochi Olympics, and it's a matter of evolving. Like right now I'm using a selfie stick too, but with tripod legs on it. So we're both utilizing.
Yeah, but I have the tripod legs on mine as well. And again, I must admit, man, this thing is similar to the air fryer for me, where this thing has been around for a while. But I know when I purchased my air fryer a couple months, probably almost a year ago now, I'm like, why didn't anybody tell me this thing was this convenient? It's going to make my life easier. So I know the selfie stick has been around, but I just recently purchased one a few months ago. And I'm like, what? This thing could have made my life so much easier years ago. So I was kind of late to the party, but I'm glad I joined.
Yeah.
So then, like you said, 2003 is kind of the time that you invented this thing, the selfie stick.
Mm-hmm.
But it didn't really kind of take off until maybe 2016, 2017, from my understanding. What do you think was the reason for that? Because I know a lot of times, and this happens quite often, people don't understand where you can be a little bit too early. Like you said, the smartphones hadn't came out yet. I think about I guess Tesla, Nikola Tesla, from kind of back in the day, who was a genius in kind of inventing and things like that, where he invented the concept of electrical cars back then. And I come across his patents, but we were just kind of dealing with gasoline cars at that point. So it seemed like the market wasn't ready until maybe now for it. Do you think that the market just wasn't ready for, I guess, the selfie stick at that point in time, and with time things kind of came on, or would you think it was another reason that why
it's a great question, and I don't have all the answers, but I do know that as you referenced with Tesla, Apple had the Newton tablet that was before its time. It didn't catch on. Yeah. Palm Pilot had a competitor called Visor that had a camera built into the software back then as well, and a little adapter for it, but that really didn't gain critical mass either. I would demonstrate it. There was a chain of camera stores in the U.S. called Ritz, so I used to go to their stores and do demos. In New York City, there was B&H Photo and J&R. I would do demos. Whenever I would demonstrate it, people would buy it. At trade shows, people would buy it. But if it was just sitting on a shelf at a store, no one understood it, and the store clerks weren't promoting it either. I think it took. It's crazy to say this as an inventor, but it took the counterfeits, I think, to create the incredible awareness of the selfie stick, because that I actually do attribute the knockoffs to doing that. Because eventually you'd start seeing them at tourist destinations on the floor in front of the Eiffel Tower, in Italy on the Ponte Vecchio, people just selling them for equivalent of $5 or whatnot, so it was affordable. And then what happened was, I said, okay, well, mine are, it's not a race to the bottom. I'm going to have always the best quality, just like there's a lot of different types of smartphones, and there's Xiaomi in China and all sorts of, but people either go for the iOS or the Android system. The Quick Pods, which is my brand, they're well built. People have had them for 15 years, and I still get comments saying it's great, works well. I just want to buy some accessories and whatnot. So I'm happy. It's like, I'm proud that it became the success it did. Of course, there's still knockoffs that are sold, but that's part of an inventor's life. You don't own a patent forever either. So it's
right.
Right.
And I tell, I guess, prospective inventors all the time that, hey, you're not successful until somebody tried to knock off your product. If nobody's thinking about it, then you're not successful enough. But once you know you're successful, because you'll start seeing copycats and knockoffs there. So I guess that's my, I guess.
That's very wise, very clever. It's unfortunate, but it's true.
My take on things. So
that's why I'd rather have at times a brand in addition to a patent, because your brand, you can have it during your lifetime and then some.
Look, and I think this is, we're on the same same frequency today, because that was going to be my next question. How important do you think branding comes into play with your product? Because again, whether it's Quick Pod, whether it's Selfie Stick, when you can trademark these names or protect the brand of the name, that, like you said, at least in the U.S., I'm not familiar with the laws in Canada, but with a trademark, like you said, patents only last for 20 years in the U.S., but the trademark lasts forever as long as you're using it. So even though you may don't own a patent, if they're associating this selfie stick with a Quick Pod or with whatever that brand is, that can be long-term a lot more valuable maybe than a patent itself at times.
Absolutely agree. Yeah, I would recommend that to anybody in business if they're building a company to focus on their branding, and that's what online marketing is all about these days. With SEO and your LinkedIn and engagement, building communities. So it's a lot easier today to do that than the old days when people had to buy $6 million commercials on the Super Bowl. Not everybody could afford that, but there's more of a level playing field now.
No, speaking of $6 million Super Bowl commercials, when you initially came out with this thing, you bought 2,000. You bought 2,000 before you were selling any, and spent were all in at that point, from my understanding, for 100K. Do you think that was a special situation given maybe your success up until that point in time, or do you think that maybe was necessary to kind of get things to where you want to go to? Because I guess I would imagine you probably wouldn't recommend any, I guess, startup or inventor to spend that much on their product, or maybe you do. I wanted to get your take on that, because when I kind of read that and saw that, I said, wow, 100K and 2,000 orders before selling any, that's pretty gutsy.
Yeah, that's part of being an entrepreneur. You do have to, be somewhat to take calculated risks, and if it's not for everybody, then they can go on Kickstarter or do other options. I don't personally like the idea of Kickstarter, because I don't like people to see what I'm doing really in that respect. Because if there's people all over the world looking at your product, unless you have an issued patent, which I don't think everybody waits to get the issued patent. They're really exposing their idea to the world. So I'd rather be a little, more clandestine about it. When I did the show on the Consumer Electronics Show, it was the media, but by that point I had a developed product that was ready to go, and I just needed to spread the word. And back then, social media wasn't where it's at today. TikTok did not exist. So I was relying on reporters from the New York Times, Wall Street Journal. David Pogue from the New York Times was so kind. He did many, many stories on it. It was in all the travel magazines. Oprah chose it on her old list. So, I was able to build up awareness that way. Today, I personally would do the same thing if I didn't have, I would leverage TikTok. I mean, I would put that money into online. Even with Amazon, it's not easy and it's not free. You have to pay to promote, to be in the buy box. It's like holding a little needle up at a football stadium, and you say, "What? Everybody see this?" Like, you're invisible, and you really have to understand the algorithms as much as possible, and they're changing all the time. And either that or work with experts and hope they're experts, and really have to do your due diligence. You're always on top of it, everything from packaging to marketing to pricing, everything is critical.
No, yeah, and that's interesting. And I guess with these shows that I'm doing, I've kind of been thinking about the process of kind of doing chopping them up and putting them on TikTok, just to kind of get it out there a little bit more. I just don't want to kind of deteriorate my attention span more, so I'm not sure if I could get somebody to work that for me as opposed to me having to work it. But it seems like with and again, TikTok obviously is a thing and is important. I've been trying to stage off of it just to kind of, like I said, not deteriorate my attention span, but I'm gonna have to kind of figure that situation out, because it is highly effective. And that's interesting what you were saying about Kickstarter. I hadn't thought about that, the fact that it just kind of left up on there. I know last week I interviewed a woman, and she has this, I guess, luxury toilet paper stand, if you will. And I actually thought it was a pretty cool invention, but she didn't want to kind of maybe use her own assets and other things to kind of manufacture it or pay for manufacturing and things like that. So she is putting it on Kickstarter. It's up on Kickstarter for people to see and go, I think, reserve it for $1 or whatever the case may be before the campaign goes active. But I guess I hadn't thought about the fact that it's just on there for people to kind of see. Like you said, if you don't have an issued patent, which I think hers was patent pending, you're just kind of giving, I guess, ammunition and ammo to people to look at it and already kind of create knockoffs, as opposed to, okay, if you have a patent pending, but you have a developed product, you can sell it. And by the time, hopefully, people kind of copycat it or duplicate it or whatever, you have already kind of taken advantage of it being out there for so long. But for it to just be sitting on Kickstarter for a number of months or years, whatever the case may be, that can be disadvantageous. So I guess that's an interesting point I had not thought of.
Yep. And plus, people are able to monitor the success of Kickstarter, your campaigns, very well. As you said, a successful product is one that gets copied. I've heard stories even in the fashion industry where somebody would show something at New York, on the runway, for example, at a show, and overseas they would take pictures and they would have vessels that were on the ocean with seamstresses and sewing machines. And by the time docked, the garments were ready. And, there's always somebody watching you.
That's crazy. So you talking about you had talked about going like not changing the things from a marketing standpoint. How were you able to leverage kind of the stardom from like kind of the Disney products and other toy products that you did to get a chance to go on Oprah and go on some of these talk shows to be able to get it out there? I think even with the CES show in Vegas, maybe spent like $20,000 to kind of get it in the hands of certain people. I guess who would you recommend or advise as it relates to somebody trying to kind of get their product marketed in a way that is, I guess, most effective?
Well, today, of course, with influencers and micro-influencers, you can reach, I used to just send samples I sent it just to Oprah Magazine. I just sent a sample and somebody opened the package and it, took many, many months, but then I got the news that they were going to feature it. So, you just you fire all your shots and you hope for the best. And I've always worked out of my home, even long before the pandemic, it's somewhere that I can work late at night. It's quiet. The overhead is low. So, you always want to be as practical as you can. And I do a lot of my own prototyping. I learned a lot from being in the arcade industry about electronics. I was using an oscilloscope and I understood the theory behind everything. So even when I did the talking mirror, I knew all about digital technology and converting analog voices into the digital soundtracks and all that stuff and compressing it. So, just be as resourceful as you can. If you don't have the money on your own, find somebody that believes in your project as well. And, if it was $20,000 it took me to go to CES, I had to pay as well, to be at the show, airfare there, hotel. I did not have a booth that first year. I just ran, I did this thing, it was an event for the media that night. And it almost didn't happen. It turned out that all of the cartons were airshipped over Christmas because CES takes place just after New Year's. And it's it's a very hectic time. Everything, shipping, all this stuff. So when I got there that night, they hadn't even opened the cartons. Like it was like we had an hour before the show opened, and I was, where are my products? All the gift bags. They said, we don't know, and nobody was running around. And I had to go back there. I was cutting boxes open myself and putting tags on them. And this is the story of an inventor. Even with the bubble pads, we had to fly them in. They came into JFK. I came into New York, and half of them had exploded because of the air pressure changes. And I was going through them one by one, cleaning them, putting them back into the packaging, getting them ready to ship to the Disney stores. That's why, as I said earlier, nothing beats experience. So, if I have a choice to have somebody fix my air conditioner, somebody that has the theory or somebody that's been doing it for 20 years, I'll go after the guy that has the theory. You can't learn a bike by just reading in a book how to ride a bike. So I think hands-on, nothing beats it.
No, for sure. And I completely agree with that. And I mean, again, that just got, like you said, the life of an entrepreneur, inventor, where you have this roller coaster ride, so to speak. And I think after having to do it so many times, that's the cool thing about being an inventor is it seems like this is not like the only product that you guys are going to have. You're going to invent something else. And the fact that you are learning the ropes and experiences and what not to do and what to do the first time around, that's going to serve you later on, which I know. And I know she mentioned this before as a young lady who I am kind of helping out go through the process. So I was kind of telling her, hey, this is how you kind of draft some drawings up, how you find your manufacturer. This is how you do a patentability search. So I'm kind of taking her through the process. And I was telling her that, hey, the next time around, you're going to know all this stuff already. So it may be a headache or maybe, difficult the first time around, but the next time and each subsequent time, it's going to be a lot quicker because you already know what to do. So, it's definitely something about experience for sure. What would you say was your biggest breakthrough? Because again, you did the CES show that you talked about, the talk shows. It seems like QVC was a big part of just the demonstration aspect of it, because we have a product that new. It seems like, I know you said it, you would often go into stores, or you would go into stores, maybe not often, but it'll be just sitting there in the package because people didn't know what it was and how to work it. But when you were able to go on QVC, and it seemed like it was just kind of selling out left and right, would you say that was your biggest breakthrough, or maybe was it a combination of things that kind of broke the product through?
Yeah, it was a combination. It was a confluence of things, but that definitely was a great experience. I was called back many times. They gave me a great spot. It was 9 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. on a Friday, which they said is the best selling period because people in California, especially the Beverly Hills 90210 crowd, that was when they tuned in on a Friday at 6 p.m. their time. So I had a sweet spot, and it was just before Christmas. It was a great gift item. And I was told that there was a potential of 93 million viewers back then. It was great. It was a great experience, and I think nothing beats that kind of demonstration on a mass market level. I mean, you can do one-on-ones in a store or at a trade show, but it's the equivalent of having a TV commercial, but that goes on for 8 minutes or so, or 7 or 8 minutes. It was ideal.
And how did that opportunity come about? Because I would imagine, was it maybe some contacts, or is it kind of similar to a Shark Tank where you can throw
cold calling? I just kept plugging away, getting rejected, getting emails unanswered, and trying to phone and trying to make, and then finally they'll send you some forms. Oh, fill out this insurance form or do this, do that. Then you have to come in for guest training, and then you still don't have a purchase order. And, it's nerve-wracking, but it's exciting as well.
For sure. So I guess what would maybe a combination of QVC and some other things being your biggest breakthrough, what would you say was your biggest just challenge or the most difficult moment? And I was going to see if you can maybe share the story of being in the Beijing Olympics, and just I thought this was hilarious where you're going through the trade show and asking a guy who has a knockoff, like, who invented this? And he's like, no, I did.
That was very frustrating because that wasn't the first time that I had seen knockoffs. I was selling to different camera stores, and then I would see that they were buying knockoff versions of it as opposed to reordering from me. And confronting them, nobody wants to answer, because your lawyer calls their lawyer type of thing, but then it sours the relationship. So these are business decisions you have to make. That was a problem, sure. When I thought being at the Olympics would be a great exposure. I was already in the airport stores in China before that, where they were selling quite well. We're getting reorders. So I thought, okay, I'll go to the next level. And of course, I was hoping that, branding would mean something because in China, certain brands shine, like Apple was a great brand back then as well. So I thought, okay, this could be a good opportunity. Not every business decision pans out, of course. For me, when things really started to percolate and heat up, and I knew there was an item, it was when it was featured on a website called Gizmodo, and all of a sudden it was like every 10 seconds orders were coming in, and it was going on all day long. And at first I didn't know why the orders are coming in, and then of course I found out. So having now the equivalent will be influencers. So if you have somebody that's got strong voice and lots of followers, I think the same thing happens. I love watching Shark Tank. I've been on the Canadian version of the show that Kevin O'Leary was on before he went on to Shark Tank. And it's also great exposure. So if an inventor is fortunate enough to make their way onto Shark Tank, I've heard that, it's the Shark Tank effect. Your sales just explode. So it's all about exposure. If you have a good product, good idea, priced right, built well, and, you've thought about all the possible negative problems that can occur. Like, I'm fastidious when it comes to developing a product. I do everything. I put them in the freezer for a week. I put them in the heat. I throw them in salt water. I mean, I just do artificial aging and testing on absolutely everything. Run over them with trucks. Like, I really am curious, how they'll hold up over these different types of extremities, and I won't release a product until I'm satisfied that I'm going to have. If there's going to be a defect ratio, it's got to be like less than 0.5%. I don't want people.
Wow. No, and it seems like that's like you said, just having that quality product, and with the copycats, it seems like a lot of the times they're just trying to get it quickly as possible, and they're not thinking about the quality. So a lot of times that stuff breaks down quickly or whatnot, and after a while, you're like, hey, we're going to go to this brand because we know their stuff is going to withstand the test of time, as opposed to going to a knockoff. It's like kind of going to a gas station and buying a charger. I know that charger is going to last all of one day, if that, and then it's going to
100%, or it might cause a fire in your house.
Right.
100%. So when I was in England, back at around maybe 2015, 2016, they had some that had rechargeable batteries because they had a remote control on them. And my patent called for a remote control, but they were using, I guess, early, maybe lithium ion even. And some of these things were catching fire. I mean, we hear that now with all sorts of appliances.
Yep.
Or lately, some blenders were just recalled, 5 million of them over this sort of thing, overheating, charging problems, whatnot. So these are things that, sure, a copycat, they'll just close shop. They're not going to, stand up and be around for any liability issues.
Oh yeah, for sure. And I mean, that's great just doing that type of testing. And it kind of reminds me, I know just being in the automotive industry here in the Detroit metro area, they have to do all those tests, and where you have the hot tests or cold tests, and kind of the vehicle still have to kind of operate in these different harsh conditions or extreme conditions. It seems like you put your same products through those same
100%. I learned that from my time in the arcade, the game coin operated amusement parks. We used to have to, Toronto's a very cold climate. It's like, and we would rotate the machines every 3 months. If I was in bowling centers, billiard rooms, universities, whatnot, you have to shuffle the games around. This was in the old days. You had to pick the whole game up, and they'd be outside sometimes for 6 or 8 hours at a time, depending on where they're being moved to. And if you plug them in too soon, you could fry a board. Now, today, with cars are left outside, and we don't have that problem. Maybe the electronics are amazing. If you go back 20, 30 years with electronics, they weren't as stable. There would be faulty components. So everybody stepped up to the plate. The integrated circuits are better. The technology is better. And cars, they can operate from the lowest temperatures to the highest temperatures, generally, even batteries. So there's been a lot of improvements, but that's my mandate always. I just want something that people, if they want, they can keep it for 25 years or more. Now, some of the toy mirrors, my Beauty and Beast mirror, people are still using them. I get messages from parents saying, "Oh, can we still buy it? I have one, but I want my daughter to have it." Yeah, you can buy them on eBay still. What toy lasts 25 years? Only toys made by me.
No, for sure. And that's a good thing. Going back to the branding, we were talking about branding. Your brand is associated with quality and durability, and people appreciate that over time, as opposed to having to go kind of buy something every couple months or couple years because it's breaking down. So that I guess I hadn't had that much of an appreciation for it, but I think that type of testing should be employed again by inventors as they're kind of creating their products.
They'll do safety testing, but that's really that's the minimum standard. I go the maximum. Yeah.
No, for sure. So and I know we're coming up on an hour, so I kind of want to wrap up with a couple questions. I do want to hit off on a nonprofit quickly because you have the Starlight Children's Foundation. And I do want to highlight that because I think that is important. What was like the origination of that, and what made you kind of want to kind of give back in that way?
Yeah, I met with the people who started it, Peter Samuelson and his cousin Emma Sam. She's an actress. She was in General Hospital, Dynasty, and I was doing a lot of work with Disney, so I was in California. And don't even remember exactly, but I was introduced to a group of people that were also involved with Starlight, and then they invited me to sit on, a little committee with them, and I became very interested in it, and I kept doing whatever I could because, children, even as I mentioned earlier, I was doing magic tricks for children. I've always, adored. I have grandchildren now. I adore family and inspiring children, inspiring creativity, and amusing them, and with the game centers, we specialized in birthday parties. It was like Chuck E. Cheese style operations. So the fact that some of these children, unfortunately, are dealing with illnesses, if we could entertain them somehow. So there were tie-ins with Nintendo and other companies, distractive therapy. That was what it was all about. So I was doing my best to bring awareness to it and to, fundraise. And it's a feel-good project. I mean, that's what we should all do.
Oh, for sure. Absolutely. No, and anytime you've been blessed, it seems like we all have a responsibility to try to give back and kind of help inspire or help out, I guess, the next person as they're coming along. So, no, that's really cool. Yeah, I definitely wanted to highlight that because as I was kind of looking at that, I thought that was pretty cool and worth talking about. So you mentioned, I think the milkshake shaker, you're kind of doing something coming out with that. Is it a way that people can follow, and just kind of as a broader question, and following you and kind of following the things that you have going on, is it a way that people can kind of get when that's coming out and more information as it gets closer to the release date with that?
I'll post it on my website. I'm not big on social media personally, but the product will have. But the FrommWorks, it's FROMMWORKS.com. So it's FrommWorks.com, and I'll put it up. It's a trademark that's been accepted. It's going to be called Swirly Heads. Kind of a fun name, Swirly Heads, and it's going to be a safe way for children to make some really fun drinks, healthy-ish drinks. And it will empower them to do it on their own, totally safe. And there'll be a number of different, character heads on this apparatus. I can't divulge too much, but
for sure.
It's exciting, and it's a Christmas item. It'll be Christmas 2024.
Okay, yeah. Then we'll definitely, when the interview comes out, we'll definitely put out the website and the link so people can access. And I think the website is pretty good and really kind of shows all of the things that you have done, because a lot of people, I'm pretty sure they have you associated with the selfie stick or the quick pot, and rightfully so. But when you look on his website, you're like, man, this guy's the man. He's done everything, or at least that was my thought as I was checking on that. And like, man, I didn't realize that you had done so much. So I guess the last question I'll get you out of here on is the inspiring advice for aspiring entrepreneurs or inventors. Again, been successful time and time again on your different products, from the selfie stick to some of the Disney products that we talked about, to much more. What advice would you give to aspiring entrepreneurs and inventors as they're looking to try to navigate the journey and have at least a fraction of the success that you have had over the years?
I think perseverance, is the name of the game. I've heard stories about some of the movies that were made that took 16 years to bring a movie to life. And, many people would have given up long before that. You also have to know when you should quit and fold your tent. This is where professionals such as yourself might say, you know what, it's been done before. The claims you're infringing someone else, whatever. Like, know what you're doing. That once, if you pass that litmus test where you feel, okay, this is an item, I've tested it on people, and I'm getting positive reaction, not just from friends and family, but from strangers, and people would actually buy it. People can do all this A/B testing now and other things. And I know there's non-disclosure issues involved, but just don't give up, because it's a rocky road. There's going to be a lot of setbacks, a lot of objections. Be patient, be kind, be respectful to the people you're dealing with as well, because who knows what they're going through. I do a lot of yoga, and when I do yoga at the end of the class, they're always saying, look, we don't know. You don't know what the people beside you are going through in their life. Be as quiet as you can when you exit. And that's the same thing. We're dealing with professionals, and they could have issues going on in their life as well. So if they're ignoring you, or it appears to be ignoring you, just be patient, be kind, be respectful, and be persistent. That's my approach.
No, and I like that. And I think as much as you were speaking to the audience, man, I was able to kind of receive some of that stuff as relates to patience and really not knowing what people are going through. I know a lot of times we want, especially in this day and age where we want everything quick and fast and instant, kind of be patient, because you never know. Somebody may get back to you, but they may be going through something at that time. So, I actually really like that. I appreciate you giving me some time this morning. I definitely think that the audience will take a lot out of it. I definitely implore everyone to go to the website, because this guy's the real deal. He has done some things that you may have not thought that he was a part of, that he's the mastermind behind. So I thank you for giving me some time this afternoon and kind of talking through your journey. And until next time, I would love to maybe have you back when the milkshake comes out towards the end of the year, or when other products come out, to be able to talk about those and highlight those. This has been great and pretty cool for me to be able to take part in here today.
All right. I enjoyed it immensely, and I'm very pleased to meet you. Thank you so much.
Definitely. All right, audience, until next time, we are out.